Willie Lynch and the pattern of learned behavior in the black community. Let's get right to it, shall we? Hello again, J Spot peeps, and welcome back to the J Spot. I'm your host, Mr. J. And for those of you who have subscribed already, thank you so much. We really do appreciate your support. And for those of you who are stopping by for the first time, welcome. And while you're here, if you enjoy this content, make sure you subscribe. Give us a like. Share this content with your family and friends. And make sure you hit that notification bell to be notified of content going forward. One of my earliest memories about growing up in the segregated South, well, not one of my earliest, but one of my most indelible memories of growing up in the segregated South, going to a segregated school, all black school, were the summers when we had recreation. And what that was is that we would all go to the gym during the summer on the weekdays and play basketball, and the records would be playing Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, and Aretha Franklin, Ain't No Way, and Nobody Loved a Man the Way That I Love You, or something like that, and Otis Redding, and the place was a great time. It really was, to be black folks. Nobody bothering us, just, chilling, just having a ball. People dancing and jack rocks and jump ropes and, like I said, playing basketball, and some kids would be outside playing softball or baseball or football, and the girls would be gathered sniggling at the boys and, wearing their little penny loafers with their bobby socks and long pretty legs, man. Nothing like a beautiful black woman, boy, let me tell you. Anyway, one of the other things about it, though, was the way black women would talk about each other all the time. You can hear it in school, too. She makes me sick because she got good hair. She makes me thick. She thinks she's pretty because she's light-skinned. I mean, it was like light-skinned girls with long, fine hair, boy, were anathema to darker-skinned girls. And the brothers, for some reason or other, they would gravitate more toward the light-skinned girls, And during that time, of course, being a young boy, I never really paid much attention. I never paid much attention to what they were saying about one another. I was shooting marbles and playing basketball, dustied up all the time. I wasn't thinking about women. But as I grew older, and I started noticing them, and they were noticing me, and more so when I became more learned about the history of America, particularly in my older adult years, and I came across, and I would notice, the behaviors more. I became more interested in how, why we were like that, why women were like that towards us. You didn't see it so much with brothers, with the males, but the females, even to this day. I have a lot of female friends, and they call me, and I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with any of them where they weren't talking about another black woman somewhere in the conversation. Not all the time, of course, but I can't recall not ever having a conversation with one conversation with all of them where they didn't have something to say about another black woman. Not because they had something against the black woman, sometimes because they thought the woman had something against them. But about 11 years ago, I wrote a 2-part article titled Willie Lynch and the pattern of learned behavior in the black community, because I had come across when I had my radio show years ago on Hot Topics Talk Radio, and I was doing a blog and I was writing for these different newspapers and magazines, and I came across, actually years before that, I had come across the Willie Lynch manifesto. And, it opened my eyes to a lot of the behavior that I was witnessing as a child between blacks, and even to this day. And it starts out, one of the most glaring things about this manifesto was what it said, what it prophesied. And I'll quote, it says, "The black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands." End quote. Now I want you to keep those two phrases in mind: self-generating and self-refueling. And so, let's get right into the article. Some folks say the purported manifesto of slave maker Willie Lynch is a myth, while others beg to differ. Truth is, however, whether fact or fiction concerning authorship, the document exists, and as it turns out was quite prophetic concerning perpetual learned behavior among blacks in America. Over the past few years, I have written many articles about learned behavior in the black community, with a focus on the ape story. Now, before I go on, let me insert this disclaimer. When I'm talking about the ape story, this is in no way to conflate apes' behavior with the behavior of blacks. That's not what this is about. So I'll continue. The ape story chronicles the trained behavior of caged apes and their singular and later group response after being punished for exercising their natural behavior. In other words, for doing what apes do. Although the manifesto outlines 6 cardinal principles on how to make a slave, the male slave, the female slave, and her offspring, and how these principles continue to affect blacks in present-day America, those are the ones that will receive attention in this article as it relates to the then and to the now. The Willie Lynch manifesto posits that in order to make a slave, that not unlike horses or the apes in the ape story, the Negro slave must first be broken of his or her natural instinct, or what he referred to as their wild state. In other words, broken from doing what Negroes do, or Africans do, or did. For the purpose of context, during slavery, Americans viewed the horse as an important economic tool. As a result, the theft of a horse could result in hanging for the convicted thief. Subsequently, the horse and the Negro slave in the eyes of the slaveholder were of equal import to the slaveholder's financial success, thus economically tied together from a figurative sense. Now, just what was this so-called wild state? Well, according to the manifesto, the Negro's first natural inclination in this wild state would be to seek his or her freedom. Duh. This instinct, according to the manifesto, made the Negro dangerous even while in captivity. A consequence of this danger, Lynch warned, was the potential of slaveholders being murdered in their sleep. That bring you back to open carry? Does that remind you of why open carry is still so important in this country? afraid of their past and the things that they continue to do to blacks in this country. And thus Lynch cautioned slaveholders about employing Negroes in or around the big house. Now, this natural N-word state, as Lynch so eloquently puts it, of course, when I wrote this article, I didn't say N-word. I said the word snowflakes, as if that word is somehow going to make the world better by not saying it. Doesn't matter what you say or whether you say it or not. It's what you do. So, as Lynch so eloquently puts it, could only be erased, this N-word state, through the use of physical violence accompanied by psychological trauma. The objective was to break the will to resist. So, meaning eliminating the will to seek freedom and avoid working. A complete and total reversal of the mental state must take place. And doing so required, as previously mentioned, the male slave, the female slave, and the female slave's offspring. And here is where we go from the figurative to the literal. Physical violence and psychological trauma. Recall earlier the statement regarding how the horse and the slave were figuratively tied together from an economic standpoint? Well, in order for this mental reversal to achieve its desired effect, the horse and the Negro slave had to become tied together literally. And this is how they achieved that. After beating the male slave nearly to death in front of the female slave and her offspring, the slaveholder would tie each limb of the male to 4 different horses. The horses then proceeded to tear the male apart, literally, right in front of the woman and the child. Psychological trauma. This is done not only to affect the behavior of other male slaves, but even more so to affect the behavior of the female as it related to the rearing of her offspring. This indoctrination lends an entirely different perspective to the scripture. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. Nevertheless, this is exactly what the slaveholders needed to have happen. The complete and utter cooperation of the female. Sound familiar? Think about the genius of that strategy. Not only did the slaveholders succeed in putting the fear of God in most of the male slaves, the slaveholders also succeeded in having the offspring of the female slaves raised subservient to, submissive to, and totally dependent on the slaveholders from generation to generation. Self-generated and self-refueled. That was then. This is now. Fast forward to present day America, and what we find are methods that, although different in application tactically, they achieve the same results. Think about it for a minute, folks. What segment of the black population does the mainstream American economy target more? Black men or black women? And why? In addition, what segment of the black population does the criminal justice system target more? Black men or black women? And why? Finally, what family unit does the American social service system target more for dismantling? Black families or white families? And why? However, the more important question is what segment of the black population is most affected by these tactics and why? For the answers to these questions, folks, plus more on the Willie Lynch manifesto and how the making of a slave continued in perpetuity, join us next time for the next video, Willie Lynch and the pattern of learned behavior in the black community, part 2. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with me in the J Spot. And make sure that you subscribe for those of you who haven't. Share this content with your family and friends. Give us a like. We would love to have our subscriptions up to 500 before the end of the month. We're almost there. Make sure, folks, that you come back to see me because we have a lot more discovering to do and a lot more purpose to pursue. In the meantime, peace. I wear the scars. I wear the scars of many years of life beneath the lash. Scars that burn from salty tears, a pain that has not passed. I wear the scars of mental strife, of knowledge long denied. My history slashed with the knife, salt in the wound applied. I wear the scars of chains unseen. Discolored is my flesh, locked with metaphoric keys, a solitary death. I wear the scars of fabled myths, the stamp of implication, the stamp that says my only gifts are crime and fabrication. I wear the scars of hate and scorn, of ignorance and pride, from those who rue that I was born, whose whole life's been a lie. I wear the scars of many years of life beneath the lash, but you will wear the scars of fear. Watch out, here comes your past.